Welcome back to Narrations. Tonight's movie is joyful, heartfelt, musical, and deeply sincere, a beautiful retelling of a classic story through humor, warmth, and timeless truth. This is the Muppet Christmas Carol, where laughter and love bring new life to an old soul. Snow drifts gently over the rooftops of Victorian London, settling into cobblestone streets and glowing softly beneath gas lamps. The city hums with life as shopkeepers close for the night and families hurry home, scarves pulled tight against the cold. And as the snow falls, familiar voices rise together, singing of goodwill, kindness, and the spirit of Christmas. The Muppets welcome us into the story, telling us that this is the tale of Ebenezer Scrooge, and that they know it well, because they were there when it happened. Inside a dark counting house sits Scrooge himself, thin and sharp-eyed, wrapped in bitterness like a second coat. He counts his money by candlelight, unmoved by the joy of the season outside. His loyal but overworked clerk, Bob Cratchit, shivers at a tiny desk nearby, struggling to keep warm as Scrooge refuses to add more coal to the fire. When Bob timidly asks for Christmas Day off to spend with his family, Scrooge snaps back with irritation, mocking the holiday and dismissing joy as foolishness. Still, Bob thanks him kindly, wishing him a Merry Christmas before leaving for home, carrying hope with him despite the cold. Moments later, Scrooge's cheerful nephew Fred arrives, full of warmth and laughter, inviting his uncle to Christmas dinner. Fred speaks of love, generosity, and togetherness, but Scrooge answers with harsh words, calling Christmas a waste of time and family a burden. Fred leaves disappointed but hopeful, believing his uncle may still change. As the office empties, Scrooge locks up and begins his lonely walk home through fog-filled streets. He passes families laughing through windows, carolers singing in the snow, and children running freely, all reminders of joy he refuses to accept. At home, Scrooge enters his dark chambers, where silence reigns. But something is wrong. A strange sound echoes through the halls, chains rattling, footsteps dragging, the clank of metal heavy with sorrow. From the shadows emerges the ghost of Jacob Marley, Scrooge's former business partner, wrapped in thick chains forged from locks, ledgers, and cash boxes. Marley's face is hollow, his voice filled with regret as he warns Scrooge of the fate awaiting him if he does not change. Marley explains that the chains he wears were forged in life by greed and cruelty, and that Scrooge's own chains are already forming. He begs Scrooge to listen, to learn, and to take the final chance he himself squandered. Before disappearing into the night, Marley delivers a warning: Scrooge will be visited by 3 spirits, each bringing a lesson he must face before Christmas morning, or suffer a fate worse than death. Shaken and terrified, Scrooge collapses into his bed, trying to convince himself it was all a nightmare. But as the clock strikes midnight, a bright light fills the room. The ghost of Christmas past appears, glowing softly, gentle but firm. The spirit lifts Scrooge effortlessly and carries him through time, back to his childhood. They arrive at a lonely schoolhouse where young Scrooge sits alone during the holidays, abandoned and forgotten. The sight stirs something deep inside him, a sadness he buried long ago. Memories unfold of his sister Fan, who loved him dearly and rescued him from loneliness, only to pass away too soon. Scrooge watches himself grow older, full of promise and love, especially when he meets Belle, the woman who once held his heart. But as years pass, ambition replaces affection. Scrooge chooses money over love, and Belle leaves, breaking both their hearts. The spirit shows him one final scene: Belle now happy, surrounded by family, laughing warmly beside a Christmas fire. Scrooge cannot bear it. He begs the spirit to stop, overwhelmed by regret and pain he has never allowed himself to feel. The light fades. The past dissolves. And Scrooge finds himself once again alone in his room, trembling, shaken, but changed. A loud, joyful laugh echoes through the air. The room bursts into color, warmth, and music as the ghost of Christmas present appears, larger than life, dressed in rich green robes, surrounded by food, laughter, and celebration. The spirit invites Scrooge to witness Christmas as it is lived now. They travel through the city, watching families gather with joy despite hardship. They arrive at the Cratchit home, small, humble, but overflowing with love. Bob Cratchit dances into the room, arms full of cheer, as his family welcomes him warmly. And there, glowing brighter than any candle, sits Tiny Tim, fragile in body but strong in spirit, smiling with pure joy as he raises his voice in blessing. God bless us, everyone! Scrooge's heart tightens as he watches the family laugh, sing, and give thanks for what little they have. He sees how deeply Bob loves his family, and how kindly they speak of him, even him, the man who gives them so little. Scrooge turns to the spirit, voice trembling, and asks the question he fears most, whether Tiny Tim will survive. The spirit's joyful expression softens into sadness. If nothing changes, the spirit says gently, the child will die. The words strike Scrooge like a blade. He bows his head, ashamed of his past cruelty, haunted by the cost of indifference. As the spirit ages rapidly before his eyes, two dark figures emerge, ignorance and want, starving children hidden beneath the spirit's robes. The spirit warns Scrooge to fear them above all else, for they are the true enemies of humanity. The room darkens. The laughter fades. A cold silence settles in. And through the fog steps the final spirit, tall, silent, cloaked in black. The ghost of Christmas yet to come. Scrooge trembles. He knows this is the most frightening lesson of all. The final spirit stands motionless, wrapped in darkness, its face hidden beneath a deep hood. No laughter. No warmth. Only silence and shadow. Scrooge trembles, knowing this ghost will show him what he fears most, the future shaped by his choices. The spirit lifts a bony hand and Scrooge is carried forward through time. They arrive in the streets of London, where businessmen speak casually of a recent death. Their words are careless, almost amused. They laugh about a man who lived alone, unloved, unmourned. No one seems to care who he was, only what he left behind. Scrooge listens uneasily, unsettled by their indifference. The scene shifts to a dark, cluttered room where thieves gather, selling stolen belongings, curtains, bedclothes, personal items ripped from a dead man's home. They mock him as they trade his possessions for coins. Scrooge watches in horror, realizing how little dignity this man was given in death. Desperate, he begs the spirit to show him someone who feels sorrow for the loss. The spirit moves again. They enter a modest home, quiet and heavy with grief. Bob Cratchit sits with his family, struggling to speak through tears. The room feels emptier than before. Tiny Tim's small crutch rests silently in the corner. Bob tells his children that their beloved son is gone. Tiny Tim has died. Scrooge collapses to his knees, sobbing openly now, his heart breaking under the weight of his cruelty. He reaches out helplessly, whispering apologies that no one can hear. He sees clearly at last what his indifference has cost, not just one child, but the love and warmth he could have given. The spirit leads him one final time, through a fog-covered churchyard. Snow falls gently as they approach a solitary grave. The spirit points to the stone. Scrooge steps closer, dread tightening his chest. He reads the name carved into the cold stone. Ebenezer Scrooge. The truth shatters him. He falls before the spirit, clutching the grave, crying out in anguish. He begs for mercy, promising to change, to honor Christmas in his heart, to live with kindness, generosity, and compassion for the rest of his days. He vows to keep the spirit of Christmas alive all year long. As he clings to the stone, it begins to fade beneath his hands, transforming into the bedposts of his own room. Scrooge wakes with a gasp. Sunlight pours through the windows. Bells ring in the distance. Snow sparkles outside. For a moment, Scrooge panics, unsure whether it is too late, until he hears laughter and realizes with wonder that it is Christmas morning. He leaps from his bed with joy, laughing wildly, filled with energy and delight. He throws open the window and greets the world with warmth, wishing strangers a Merry Christmas with childlike glee. He calls to a passing boy in the street, and sends him racing to buy the biggest turkey in the shop, not for himself, but for the Cratchit family. He laughs again, scarcely able to contain his happiness. Dressed in his finest coat, Scrooge steps into the snowy streets, greeting everyone with kindness. He donates generously to charity, offering warmth and generosity where once there was only cold. He arrives at his nephew Fred's home, nervously knocking at the door. When Fred opens it, Scrooge stumbles over his words before finally wishing him a Merry Christmas and asking to join the celebration. Fred's face lights up with joy as he pulls his uncle into a warm embrace. Later, Scrooge makes his way to the Cratchit house. He enters quietly, watching as the family gathers around their table. When Bob sees him, fear flickers, but Scrooge quickly reassures him, showering the family with kindness and good cheer. He raises Tiny Tim high in the air, laughing as the boy smiles brightly, full of life and laughter. The future has changed. Tiny Tim lives. From that day forward, Scrooge becomes a second father to Tim, a loyal friend to Bob, and a source of joy to everyone he meets. He keeps his promises, honoring Christmas not just once a year, but every single day. As snow falls gently over London and the city glows with warmth and music, the Muppets gather together, singing of kindness, love, and the magic of redemption. And Scrooge, once alone and bitter, now stands surrounded by laughter, family, and light, finally rich in all the ways that truly matter. Tiny Tim lifts his voice once more, clear and joyful. God bless us, everyone. And so ends the tale of Ebenezer Scrooge, a story of change, forgiveness, and hope, reminding us that it is never too late to open our hearts, and that the greatest gifts we give are love, compassion, and kindness. If you enjoyed this narration, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Narrations, where timeless stories are told with warmth, nostalgia, and heart.